we live? All right. Hello, everybody. If I could get a microphone check, make sure the lips are in sync with the voice, that would be great. We'll make all the necessary adjustments, and we'll get rocking and rolling. How do we look, Evan?
Seems synced up.
Seems synced up. All right. How many viewers do we have? 7,000. Perfect. Let's rock and roll. All right. So before we get started with the verses with the ROG Strix 17 and the MECH 17, I and Eluktronics, on behalf of Eluktronics, we're very excited to announce that you can now purchase the Prometheus 16 G2. And within 5 to 7 business days of June 9th, 2023, we will be shipping it to your door. And look at this. Get the custom black and white LPP, connect this to that desktop level performance, unplug it for that laptop portability. In layman's terms, that just means when this little beauty is connected, your system's going to be very cool and very quiet, much like a desktop, and be able to use all of that insane amount of wattage that we are pumping into these systems. And when you want to use it as a laptop, you disconnect it, literally an 8-second process, and you're off to the races, the library, your girlfriend's house, whatever is clever. So these things are great, and we get to start shipping them very soon, which, Evan, you have to be the most excited person than me. Right?
That it's like, oh, with the shipments coming, oh, the next day it's like, oh, 2 weeks later, yeah, it's not coming now. And then it's just any time that I would put an update out for you guys to be like, hey, it's gonna be soon.
Yeah.
It gets pushed back.
Yeah. Yep.
And at that point, I was like, all right, I'm not gonna say anything anymore until it's like officially here.
Admittedly, we were like children about it, but that's only because we're so excited about this laptop. So let me give you guys a rundown of what the Versus is about today. I personally handpicked this particular laptop. If I was reviewing as Bob of all trades, this would be something that I definitely would want to feature. And I was just very curious to see how the Ryzen 9, what is that, the 7845HX would do, which is a 12-core, 24-thread. And it's not so bad actually. It's pretty slick. So we're gonna pair the two, share some benchmarks, some fan acoustics. Just do everything that I kind of had planned for today, and let me give you guys an overview of what we've got going on here. So the Strix is a few $100 less, and as a result, you're only getting a 144 hertz display, 1080p at 67% standard RGB. So that is a pretty low color gamut. It only comes in at about 280 nits. And when you compare that to our MECH, it's a 1600p display, which is almost double the resolution. It comes in at that 16:10 aspect ratio, which is very premium, 240 hertz. And 380 nits, so a significant bump in brightness, 100% standard RGB, and it's just a much more pleasant panel. Both of them, however, do have Advanced Optimus and G-Sync, so sort of an odd move, in my opinion. If I was putting my review hat with ASUS, I might have declined Advanced Optimus and gone with a better panel. It just looks a little washed out, and in the year 2023, it really struck me as something I noticed right away, because it's just not something we typically see. Other than that, if we can switch over to the actual laptop, and I'll show you guys what we're working with here. Let me know when we're good on that, Evan.
You good?
Okay, so the system itself is very similar weight to our MECH in the mid to upper 5-pound range. It's quite plastic though, but the trackpad is glass, and that's nice. The keyboard has an aura effect. You cannot really do anything with the zones. You can just change the effects. It's not mechanical. The deck of the keyboard, though, is a little squishy. Other than that, it's pretty typical for ASUS. There's nothing out of the ordinary here. So whatever expectation you may be used to for ASUS, you certainly have here, with the exception of the display. Now, as far as the MECH 16, it's not quite as wide because of the 16:10 aspect ratio. We have a very large glass trackpad, which still has the sticker on it because this is a brand new unit. This is a per key RGB keyboard with MX cherry switches. and you could just about park a car on this thing. It is certainly stiffer, but as a result, it's actually quite a bit louder than you may be used to. But that is the nature of the mechanical keyboard. The battery in the MECH is it's a little bit bigger, maybe 8 to 10% bigger, but with it being an Intel processor, the battery life on it may be a little bit less. Think maybe 45 to 60 minutes on that. I would be spitballing those. I have not tested the Ryzen Mobile Strix 17 for battery life yet. Now, Windows Hello, the MECH has. There is no Windows Hello on the Strix. We do have the infrared camera, though, for Windows Hello on the MECH, which is pretty nice. But price-wise, there is a little bit more of a premium cost for the MECH, but of course, the Prometheus that we had just shamelessly plugged in the beginning of the video does happen to come in very aggressive price-wise, which would certainly compete with something like this, and of course add the LPP, and you know everything just goes on and on from there of amazingness. But let's get on to benchmarks. I was having some issues with the ASUS from the get-go. So what I did is I took a lot of screenshots of all the benchmarks because I was having trouble running some of the benchmarks. I was having trouble getting into games. I had to do a couple firmware updates with Armory Crate and things like that. It does seem to be relatively stable, but I was doing a little bit of testing about an hour and a half ago, and I did have some hiccups. So I've got the best benchmarks that I took screenshots of to show you guys here today. And just to be fair, I did the same thing with the MECH, and then after that, we're going to go into thermal testing and fan acoustics, and we can do that live, which will be great. But if we go into the screenshot section with Cinebench, see if I can zoom that in.
Just keep it there and just use it.
Can I actually zoom in with that? Oh yeah, it's gonna work out very nice. Thank you, Evan. Just have to pull this up a little bit. See, I have to move it too much though.
Yeah, but it's better than in your hand shaking.
Is it shaking? Is that coming clear? Can you see that at all on your screen, Ev? Multi-core is 26,000 and single core is 1,800. I gotta admit, I'm a little impressed with the multi-core, considering it is a 12 core versus our 24 core in the 13900HX. That's not bad. I mean, granted, the MECH score is higher, but for something that has a significant less core count, it does do very well. The single core performance is lower, but all in all, this is certainly a solid CPU from AMD if you are a fan of the Ryzen 7 and Ryzen 9 variants. Now, if we do the same thing on the MECH, actually, Evan, you want to open that up for me? Look at screenshots.
Which one?
Let's go right there. All right. So with no effort whatsoever, plug and play. This is without the LPP. This is no water. This is purely on air. 30,000 points and a little over 2,000 for single core. Single core is going to be a big deal for gaming, but we're not talking about a significant bump here. This is just a matter of 10% or so. So all in all, we'll take it. You can mess with the Prima BIOS that will come equipped on all of these laptops. I have seen multi-core scores 35,000 on up for those that are crazy enough to really push the boundaries on this. Have at it. The reality of it is you're not going to get a whole lot out of that unless you're benchmarking, but it is pretty fun nonetheless. Boy, this camera's very zoomy. Let's fire strike. Let's have a little bit more fun. Let's go manual mode. Inside of Armory Crate, you can use manual mode where you can crank the wattage up, and I have the fan set to run at their maximum once both CPU and GPU hit around 70 degrees. So I really try to put the system's best foot forward as much as I could versus letting, turbo or balance mode just throttle the thing to death or power throttle it. And I just didn't think that's fair. We need to really put the best foot forward we can out of this thing to try to give it the most power we can and keep it as cool as possible. And with with that said, 12,000 for graphics, 11,700 for the CPU. ASUS does apply a factory overclock when you're in turbo mode or a manual of 50 megahertz on the core, and I think 100 megahertz on the memory. Our systems do not do that, but of course you can overclock them, and we actually still came out a little bit ahead on the graphics score despite us not having an overclock. So really don't take those overclocks with much more than a grain of salt, because they don't have as much meaning as you think. It has to do with power limitations and various things like that above all else. So if we open up into, that's Firestrike. Evan, if you want to go to Time Spy. So 12.2, I mean, in my opinion, that's margin of error stuff. It's still very close. And the CPU goes from 11.7 in the Ryzen to 17.1, which is a significant bump. It really allows the 13900HX to stretch its legs. So I think that's a pretty good example of just how much more powerful the Intel processor is. In this particular benchmark, that is a significant jump. But that's not anything out of the ordinary. If you guys have watched stuff like this for a long time, then you already know what to expect out of that. It's just our systems in particular with the Prima Mod BIOS can push this number much higher than that on the CPU should they wish. But this was a max the power slider, set the fans to their maximum, and let them rip. We haven't even introduced the liquid propulsion package to any of the benchmarking for today's video. This is just air to air. Now, let's have some fun. All right. This is going to be the best. So we're going to take and extract as much heat and volume out of this system as we can.
Also note, it's 74 degrees in here right now.
Yeah, the ambient's a little warm, 74. I've been in here testing for the last, what do you think, hour and a half, 2 hours, and it was 71, so it's climbing. It's getting warm. So let's go ahead and start AIDA. We'll leave FurMark at 1080p. We're going to not have it at full screen just so I can have access to some stuff. There we go. Yeah. All right. She's ripping along. You have GPU temperatures 72. GPU power is around 100 watts. So I don't know how closely you've been following the 4070 mobile, but a lot of these have a hard time getting past 100, maybe 110 watts, and they kind of fall on their face after around 100, maybe 110 watts anyway. There seems to be some sort of voltage restriction. In my opinion, this could just leave room for Nvidia to throw a TI variant between the 4070 and 4080. Time will tell for that. For some of the hate that this graphics card gets, in my community poll that I posted about a week and a half ago, it was the most popular GPU of the 5 between 4050, 4060, 4070, 4080, and 4090 if someone were to buy one today. And I respect that because it's got good enough power and it is not run hot. I originally had an FPS test planned for this where we would see how long you could sustain as much power as possible before it would start to dial itself back. And you really can't do that with these systems because the 4070 in either one of these rigs does not throttle itself. So we skipped a pointless test today, but we will circle back to that hopefully within the next verses coming up here within a month. We do have the GPU climbing up to 77. 87 is where it would thermal throttle. The way I have this laptop set up with maximum power and fan speed, you're just not going to see it. Now, CPU wattage, you're going to see the CPU hit 96 degrees. You're going to see it hit near 100C. In today's hardware, that is normal. Until AMD and Intel can crack the code and require much less wattage to get this kind of performance, you're just going to see this. Any laptop manufacturer should be pushing that limit, but they should also have some good software in play so that way they can dial that stuff back if they want to. The kind of wattage that we are pulling from this at the moment for CPU power package is around 93 watts. You really can't compare wattage of this CPU versus the Intel variant because we're talking two completely different architectures and solutions. But it is there, and as you can see, the system between both CPU and GPU is managing to cool around 180, 190 watts of performance there. Acoustically, though, that's loud. See if we can pick this up on camera here. It does sound like you're flying a drone, actually. Acoustically, mid 60s for decibels is very loud. It is that probably would make this system 1.5 times louder than our MECH. In fact, if I were to max the fans out on the MECH right now, you wouldn't even be able to hear it over this. But that's just the way the system is designed. It is loud. It doesn't have that high-pitched whir noise to it. Too bad. It's there. It's subtle. It can be very loud, but it is just a necessity if they're going to keep it cool. This is the way ASUS happened to set this up. Now, if we were to run this in a turbo profile, acoustically, it does back down a little bit, but you will see that CPU in a game hit mid-90s, and I think for a lot of people, that might be, rather annoying. But it is one of those things where this is the way that it is. She's a little loud. And, it's kind of jarring. I mean, we're typically around systems that are much quieter than this. So
no, this is really loud.
Yeah. Yeah, and John, like you said, it does sound like there's a drone in the room. Huh. Kind of funny. So temperature-wise, you get a CPU that's going to hit 96 degrees. I really see nothing wrong with that here for this test. That's pretty normal. ASUS doesn't really seem to have a whole lot of need to do any tuning at this point because the GPU is only pulling 99 watts, and I don't think that's going to throttle too much from there. We're at 78 degrees, and the ambient is climbing in this room, so it is rather warm, pulling 100 watts from the GPU. Overall, not bad. That was the stress test for this. It lasted about 5 minutes long. Let's have a little bit of fun, show you guys something a little bit different. So I'm going to stop this. And we'll give that a few minutes to calm itself down. That's still going.
Mm-hmm.
I have everything off, right? Yeah, CPU is down.
I was wondering when it would start to
Yeah, I don't.
noticeable.
This is pretty loud. Let me try a different profile here. Turn that back to silent. Let's see if it's going to do it. Come on. Oh, there we go.
It's better.
It's better.
You can deal with it at least.
All right, let's go ahead and let this rip. Let's just start off with max fans.
That's so much quieter.
Yeah. Definitely quieter. We'll hit AIDA and the GPU stress. Right, 1080. Yep. Okay, good. The scaling of this is going to look a little bit different because we're at a 1600p screen. So no worries there. Let me tell you what. Let me make sure that stuff is on too. There we go. All right, so I want to direct your attention to something a little interesting. All right, GPU power, we're actually pulling the full 140 watts out of the MECH. Now, that's a pretty big bump. And before you get too excited, please understand that in most games, unless it is extremely GPU bound like FurMark, even a Battlefield 2042, you're rarely going to see the CPU or the GPU, get that high. But if it was pretty effortless to do it within this example. We're running the same particular FurMark update, AIDA update. Everything is fully up to date. Nvidia drivers, this is, apples to apples as we can make it. It's just the way our systems are configured, they can pull quite a bit of wattage. But this particular 4070, what I like about it is this system's a little bit smarter than that. It actually knows that the CPU power package just has to cap itself out at around 50 watts in order to saturate the GPU to full load. And that's going to be the case for like 99% of games. And it's a pretty slick way to keep temperatures down because now we have both things maxed out. They're on air. Our CPU is, it's approaching 80, but we're not quite there. It's very warm in this room. I know I've mentioned that before, but I just have to keep mentioning it. And our GPU at 80 degrees. Is that warmer than the ASUS? Yes. Is it pulling a lot more GPU wattage? Significantly more, and it's doing it much quieter.
Oh my god, yeah.
48 decibels compared to 65.
About it.
That's a big difference. It's one of those quality of life things that you really have to experience if you've never had a gaming laptop before. Something that's much louder can be very jarring, and I'm personally used to that, as I always would game with headphones anyway. So truth be told, it doesn't bother me that much, but who it bothers is my wife. And she can hear a laptop like this from my office throughout the house. And something like this is much more manageable. And the difference between 48 or 50 decibels compared to 65, for every 10 decibels up you move is nearly twice as loud. So 50 dBs typically twice as loud as 40 dB. There's a little variance there, but general rule of thumb is that is how that is applied. Now, if we want, we can turn on the liquid propulsion package. Sorry, Evan, to get it all up in your grill there. Let's stop AIDA for a second so we can actually open up the control center. Anytime you're doing heavy CPU full load tasks like this, it's always good to shut that down before we do something. And any comments that you guys have, questions, we'll definitely circle back to that shortly. Okay, so the liquid propulsion package is on. You can see the fan spinning over there. It is running. We haven't done anything other than just leave it at balance, so it's going to be very quiet. And we'll go ahead and start AIDA64 again. And I'm going to disable max fans. And now it's very quiet.
Very.
Our GPU is still pulling about 139 watts, which is absolutely stunning in my opinion. I think that's very rare to see a 4070 do that. Again, don't expect to see that in most of your games, but it was effortless to do it in this test. And yeah, our CPU package power was able to bump up a little bit. The system does seem to recognize that the LPP is connected. We get a little bit more wattage out of it this way, but it's still smart enough to realize that we don't have to go this far. Now, if you want more CPU wattage out of it while gaming, you can turn off Electro Boost, turn off Dynamic Boost, and you can usually get a little bit more CPU wattage out of it there. But nonetheless, we do have a system roughly 40 decibels at load.
That's too loud.
And we could let this run all night, come back in the morning, and this is what it would sound. I have a tremendous amount of experience with the LPP and the MECH. to know that this is just the way this works. And it's a nice tool to have in the office, at home. It's not necessary. As you can see, the system pulled great wattage without it, and it did so without thermal throttling. It's a well done system on air. It is quiet, and I think the MECH 17 is really done right, in my opinion. I like these verses. It allows me to really see and appreciate what other manufacturers have, and also see and appreciate what Eluktronics has to offer. And in my opinion, this is a very premium device. And it's just as easy as literally disconnecting the LPP, unplugging it, connecting your power supply back into your laptop. It is literally a matter of 8 to 10 seconds, and you're off. There's no mess, there's no fuss, and you're back to being fully portable. Or if you're crazy enough and you want to take the LPP with you, you can. We have people that do that, and we also have people that buy multiple LPPs and have them in the office, at home, and wherever life may take them. So all in all, that is pretty slick. And let's go into tuning, because up until recently, I really found that we had the best tuning software on the planet. And while I still feel that way, I gotta be honest, I think some other manufacturers are catching up. And I wanna show you what ASUS has done. It's not bad. This thing did fall back asleep, though. You guys see me in the reflection? How you doing? See if she can come back alive here.
Is that max brightness?
That's max brightness.
Are you serious?
Yeah. Wait. No. It went to silent mode, so for some reason it wants to... Nope. Oops, I just turned it down. So I think this is where it was, and that's max.
It's still not much better. But...
No, 280 nits.
Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah. And it's kind of washed out too, but where are you, Armory Crate? Everybody loves this. Okay, so
I hate
you go to manual mode, and you have this here, right? So you can kind of move this around. I have it set to where the CPU is maxed out for its fan speed, right at around 70 degrees Celsius. I like how they added some instructions here as to what this is. Maximum sustainable CPU power limit, maximum CPU power limit sustained over 2 minutes, and this one is sustained over 10 seconds. ASUS, nice job. Nice job adding that in. That's something that's been lacking across all manufacturers, and I thought that was really good when I saw it. Now, GPU... Again, this is, factory overclock, 50 on the core, 100 on the memory, dynamic boost is there, thermal target, all things that I think should be in a modern control center, all there. Just slide it, hit yes, and you're off to the races. But as somebody who likes to do tuning, the 4800H, 5000 series, 6000 series, 7000 series, as the series has gone on, they have required a little bit more wattage to really extract the performance from them. And this isn't anything out of the ordinary. Intel and Nvidia have been doing this generation after generation. So what used to take 15 or 20 watts for Ryzen to really produce good performance now takes around 35. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just this particular CPU uses more wattage than what a Ryzen mobile variant typically would. So if you're interested or you have one of these, my pro tip is to set SPL to around 35 watts, and you're going to get 80% of games. I think you're going to get very good GPU performance. Because this is a 1080p display, you may need a little bit more wattage than that, but it'll be very rare that you will need that much more. The current situation with this laptop, if I happen to mess with any of these and bring them down, the game doesn't want to load, or it just locks up on me. I have seen this happen before with Ryzen Mobile. I don't understand what the bug is, but just a heads up, if you happen to come across it, maybe just leave these two at their max and set SPL at around 35 watts and try it out. If you do that with this 4070 variant, you're going to get some really good thermal performance, and then you can kind of dial the fans back a little bit. that is something that I think a lot of users would appreciate. That's about the extent of what the control center can ultimately do as far as thermal tuning. You do have your GPU mode over here. Ultimate does toggle the muck switch. It forces the GPU to work. It requires a reboot. Standard mode allows advanced Optimus. After the last firmware update, if I were to run this in ultimate mode, I would be unable to play any games. I'm not too sure what is going on there. I didn't have a lot of time to explore it, but if this was just a one-off, great. I've had a lot of ASUS laptops, and their Armory Crate can be great one moment, and then it may need a couple updates the next. With that said, I like the tuning capability here, and I don't think it's going to exceed the limits of most users, and I overall do appreciate what they've done. Now let me show you something a little different. Get that screen. Okay, so right now the liquid propulsion package has its own section here.
Keep going.
Evan, yeah, please go for it. This thing's gonna slip off, is it?
I got it.
Great. Aside from being able to adjust the RGB of that independently, you can have the liquid propulsion package run quieter if you wish, but it's already quiet as it is. If you do the overclock settings, this is where you can do the same thing as the Ryzen system. You have essentially 3 different power sliders for the CPU. They work very similarly, which is very nice. You can enable a temperature limit, so if you don't want to see the system go to 95 degrees, you could set it all the way down to 75, and it will thermal throttle itself by having that cap. And this is a very simple way for a user to likely still get very similar performance to what you're used to seeing without forcing as much wattage down it, because once the system recognizes that temperature limit, it backs the power away. So that is one way to do that. The other thing we have is Electro Boost. This is kind of the cheat code for toggling maximum power. Can't say much more about it other than it is a rule-bending solution that we're so proud of, happy it's here, and it's very slick. A lot of our systems do hold some of the records for benchmarks. We've got a 4080 MECH that I think is #1 in the world. I think our 4090 is as well. And it's just really neat. Not everybody is after that, but we're proud to hold those. And we've had them for quite some time, so pretty slick. You can max the fans by toggling it here. There's also, I'm going to pan the camera down for a second. The MECH has what's called a Q key. So you've got the power button, and then next to it is the Q key. So in the BIOS, you can have that set up to either toggle the different performance modes, or you can have it set to toggle fans maximum on and off. So it's just a little feature that allows the user to kind of set up their laptop the way they want. I'm a little bit old school, so I actually prefer to have a button on the keyboard deck where I can just toggle maximum fans on and off. So that is pretty slick. And here's one. You ever download Windows, or you first get your laptop and your fans are just ripping for what seems like no reason at all? That is kind of a safety feature to have those fans going up there just to kind of maximize stability. Last thing you want is the system to thermal shut down during an update, and now you've corrupted your operating system. But the fans, they don't always behave that way, right? You could be, for no rhyme or reason, the fans could just start ramping up, and we can enable a fan switch speed. So this goes by milliseconds. And if you set this up to here, just max it out, and you put this under a load, it'll actually take 12, 15, 20 seconds before the fans start to ramp up. And this is a really cool feature that I don't hear a lot of people talking about. If your daily tasks have a lot of bursty type CPU tasks, like when you're opening up various pieces of software and the CPU hits 5 gigahertz real quick, if you adjust this up you won't have your fans going up and down. This would have been a blessing for me many years ago when I was doing commentary over a video on a laptop, and when my fans would ramp up, I would have to stop the commentary because it would sound like a hairdryer in the background. And if I had this feature right here, it probably would have saved me 50 hours worth of time over the last few years. So I'm happy that that is definitely here. Overclock settings, that's all pretty basic with the exception of enable memory overclocking. That's just a BIOS feature. We have enough features in there that'll make your head spin. Yeah, all in all, pretty slick. And let's see, fan acoustics, tuning, thermal performance, benchmarks. Let's go into the questions.
Question is, I mean, we don't have like that many.
Yeah, it's fine.
Any news on the overclock RAM?
All right, well, I'll tell you what. Let's fix the camera so we can get a good look at yourself there, buddy. So, any news on the overclock RAM? I wish I had an update. John, you don't have any update on that, do you? Okay, so as before, the 16 gigabyte DIMMs, I'm 99.9% sure those are ready and kind of have been ready for quite some time. We're just waiting on the 32s. Will just got back from Taipei not long ago. He's been very busy with some things, so I will certainly reach out to him if he's not watching this already over the weekend, and I'll follow up with you on that. It is something I was expecting to get a question about, and I dropped the ball there. So I'll definitely follow up with you on that.
How well does each CPU do at base spec wattage, 45 watts?
Very well. It does excellent. I personally think at 45 watts, you're going to get a little bit, if we're talking gaming here, a little bit more from the Ryzen, but both of them at 45 watts already kind of push the limit as to where I would set them anyway. I've always found Ryzen CPUs work very, very well at the lower end of the spectrum, and the Intel variant does very well at that, but not quite as good. If you were to set both of them at 45 watts in game, you're going to have excellent GPU performance, probably no different than if you max the sliders out. And if you were going to compare the two for Cinebench and things like that, it would be an interesting test. I would be shocked if they were too far apart from each other, and if I had to put money on it, I might want to go with the Ryzen on that. I don't know. That's a tough call. 12 cores versus 24. That's got a big hurdle to cross. But, yeah, that's something I can certainly explore and get back with you on that. It could be a fun test.
Is there a way to back up the custom light settings in Control Center?
Back them up as in what... I don't think so. You mean if you were going to like put them on a file and then redo your OS and then regain that? What do you mean?
Also, if you have any questions, now's the time.
Yeah, now's definitely the time. I don't have the chat in front of me, so I'm relying on Evan to feed me all the questions. What else we got? Okay. Back up. Man, I don't know why we would need to do that. Kind of elaborate a little bit more if you don't mind. I'd like to know.
If they're here. Oh, okay. Werner says, I'm looking at the Prometheus build page. So this has membrane keys, 500 nits display, also the RAM clock speeds. What is it on the Prometheus?
Right now, we're just shipping the 4800 megahertz Samsung DIMMs. You can put in faster memory. I have an Excel sheet with DIMMs that so far are not working out. Maybe stay away from the Mushkin line, the red line in particular. We haven't had much luck. We've tried all sorts of DIMMs, different speeds, and they're throwing a lot of errors. But most DIMMs, 5600 megahertz, even some faster than that, the Kingston Fury, which is 5600, good cast latency on that. That's pretty nice. The Kingston Furies with 6400 megahertz speed. Stay away from those. I was not impressed. They required way too much voltage. But a lot of the memory DIMMs out there so far you can test. And if you have any questions on that, feel free to get a hold of service. I have an updated page for our service center to look at so they can kind of help guide you guys if you're looking for different memory DIMMs, something faster than what we are currently shipping.
So Ninja goes on from his lighting thing. He goes, if you reinstall the control center, all the colors are gone. That's
Yeah.
all he asks.
Yeah, that's pretty normal. It kind of wipes the whole thing clean and tries not to leave any traces of previous files on there. So I don't think there would be a way to do that. But, so, sorry.
Werner then goes, Prima on Discord was boasting 7200 megahertz. How
Yeah,
is that even possible?
I saw that last night. That's because he is the devil. That man is something special. So he and I got one of the systems, the 4080 version of this, up to 6600 megahertz. That's the one that had the record at the time. He may have already beat that. But it's pretty insane. Yeah, and another thing to keep in mind, like if you are top of the leaderboards pushing the envelope like that, you likely don't have a system that you want to do Photoshop in. You know what I mean? Like, you want stability. What he's doing may be stable enough to post a benchmark, and he'll back this up too. This isn't something that you would want to set up and then give that laptop to your mother, right? It's not going to be the most stable of systems. Pretty freaking cool, though, that it was stable enough to finish that benchmark. That's fast. That exceeded DDR5 SODIMM by a landslide. So very cool. Prima, you're insane. Love you, buddy.
Does the Prometheus with the black surface, while typing leave any fingerprints?
No, it does not. Great question. Very good question. As a matter of fact, I think it does a better job of mitigating that over our MECH. Would you agree? Yeah. I think the Prometheus has done a very good job of that. As a matter of fact, the softer touch of the MECHs, while they don't really leave a fingerprint, Evan and I both were very happy to know that it didn't have that. It's just we kind of like it without, personally. So no fingerprints on that.
Definitely on a white laptop as well. I think having that feel,
right,
the dirt, and your hands are a little dirty, you touch the keys and whatever, but from what we've done so far, we don't run into any issues like that, which is really good. Because that's a big thing. It's like, sure, it performs well, but you open it up, it's like, ew.
It's all grimy.
You don't want that. That's the last thing you want. So it's like, this is clean.
Yeah, and it's held up well. I mean, we've had versions of this Prometheus in-house for quite a long time now, which is kind of what's driven us nuts, because we want to sell these things so bad, and we're finally able to do so. But in other words, we've laid hands on this system enough to know that grime buildup has not been an issue for us. So to each their own on that, but we can confidently say you're going to be in good hands there.
Oh, they said, LOL, hard to find questions when you cover all of it.
Oh, I appreciate that.
True.
Nice. Yeah, laptop life, baby. You know, this is my jam. I use these. I love them. I think we have a good product, and I'm proud as heck to be part of it. So, and just giddier than I could possibly be, just over the moon for the Prometheus.
Why don't you show it off again?
Yeah, I should.
Turn the lights on.
Yeah, sure.
So you can show it off.
Just this whole yin-yang contrast is... so nice. As far as port selection, I mean, this is a glorified MECH 16 with a different shell and a different display.
They want to know while we're here if you can compare the Prometheus screen and the MECH 17 screen.
Absolutely. So with the Prometheus, what we were going for was the...
This is the new. Yeah, this is the new.
Yeah.
This is our baby. That's gorgeous. Thank you.
We wanted to offer something that looked good, of course, but we understand that the market is crazy, and we need to be a little aggressive on a few things. So we cut a few corners by removing G-Sync and Advanced Optimus. It still has a muck switch. To be perfectly honest with you, I usually turn off G-Sync anyway, and I run Fast Sync. G-Sync is not as much of a deal breaker, especially on the higher horsepower systems. And I think it was an expense that was wise to pull in order to put that savings, push that onto the customer, so that way you guys can get a better bang for the buck. But with that came a 500 nit display, and that's what we're advertising it as. It's actually brighter than that, and it's is fantastic. It is so nice. In fact, when I use this laptop, we've used it for a stream, and then I'll go back to my mag and I'll immediately start toggling up the brightness as if I did something wrong. Like, it is so nice to look at. It's a great panel. So, and again, still has the MUX switch. The color gamut is right up there with any of our other systems at 100% standard RGB. So the standard there is, I think, the bare minimum. It's just very bright, and that's kind of nice. Once you have something like that and you go back to something else, you can really tell. But it's nice. It's very sturdy and hefty. The lid is very sturdy. It just, I don't know, it feels like a very well-built system. I like how the bottom panel comes off and the whole entire I/O on the back still stays put. So on the MECH 16 and 17, when you pull off the bottom panel, everything back here comes off too. And in this case, it actually all stays put, which, as you know, Evan builds these things all the time, and that's going to be a nice quality of life for him.
Yes.
But,
the black thing where the hoses connect is just a little cover.
Yep.
That's it. It's just a little flap that opens up, and then you can close it to hide the hole.
Yeah, it's actually kind of weird. I was surprised. It'll be interesting to see how the final version, even though this technically is one. I personally don't think we even need this because it self-seals itself, which is really cool for the second generation liquid propulsion package laptops. But yeah, it's there. I don't know. I might actually remove it on mine. I'm not sure.
Let me plug in the power supply so we can show the screen.
We can use this one.
Well, yeah, but we want to use...
Oh, we want to compare it? Floor.
Yeah, that's what we do.
So comparing the screen, I don't even know if there's a drive in here. There might not be a drive in here. I might have pulled the drive out of this for this, but we'll find out in about 2 seconds.
Yeah.
See if there's a drive in here. It might just go right to the BIOS, and if that's the case, I'm sorry. With that said, trying to show brightness and color gamut on a single camera is very hard to do. When I was reviewing laptops, I really was just obsessed with OLED, and there was a Gigabyte laptop that I was using. It had an OLED screen, and I was trying so hard to really showcase the difference so as a viewer you could visualize that. And I was unable to do so. I spent a lot of time. We have something in here.
Also, the MECH 17s do not come with that cover. So the MECH 16s and 17s don't have a cover or anything. Just the Prometheus 16s and older gen stuff.
Well, let's try it. Let's
Well, it
see.
also doesn't help that we're using a different background. But
No, I know, you're right.
on the ASUS Control Center, you can set custom colors and assign the profile per app. This is very nice. Perhaps you can update the Control Center to do this.
You could do aura effect, but I'm unable to do any zone or per key. I find that both...
Why didn't we just use... That's fine.
No, this one's a little bit nicer. The other one's kind of close. All right, so there's the MECH, about 380 nit. Different backgrounds, though. Again, this is going to be nearly impossible to capture on a camera. So I can even look at that and still not really tell the difference. You could see it in person, but... You like the background on this? You like this one better too, John? I think this is our stock image right now too, so that's the one we're using.
Yeah, but I know they wanted to switch to this, and I don't...
The current image that we just had...
That was max brightness on both.
Again, it's hard to tell on a camera. But when we're looking at them, you can see it. Yeah. Gosh, it got warm in here.
75.
75. I said I was going to get to 76. Man, I missed it. What else we got?
Oh, they saw a difference on the video.
They could tell? I'm impressed.
Apparently.
young guys with good eyeballs.
We don't have any other questions, at least.
Nice.
So,
Well, overall, that was the breakdown. The Asus laptop. And hopefully you guys got some value out of that. Ultimately, want to be able to compare it with something that, you know, had the same GPU. Granted, our unit does have some more premium features. You know, if you're looking at the Asus, perhaps you see that and you're like, oh, okay, maybe you spend a couple $100 more and just get something that's perhaps more appealing to use. Everybody's different. Somebody could look at the display on that and be like, dear God, no. And others are like, I don't care. It's okay. You know what I mean? Like, you're allowed to like what you like. It's not a big deal. But just understand that there's options out there. And ultimately, I think we're producing a good product with good quality parts, nice memory. What is that, a 980 Pro that's in here, or the commercial equivalent for the drive? It's very, very nice and robust parts. So I like it. All right, folks. Well, I think that about wrap it up. I'll put timestamps in this over the weekend. If there's any questions that I missed, I'll definitely answer those as well. And yeah, that's going to about do it. Thanks for watching. Evan, you shutting her down? Oh, okay. White panels get dirty like the old white Apple laptops. We kind of touch base on that. Is that the question, fellas?
Yeah, that's the question.
They seem to hold up so far, but with that said, I mean, with the inside of the keyboard deck area being black, that's probably ideal. But, I mean, we keep a pretty clean house here, and we don't have... Yeah, yeah. Oh, Warner, you're talking about has it browned over time? Yeah, like the first gen Alienware white that would almost like yellow. No, we're good. These do not do that. So I know exactly what you mean. Yeah, that was a weird issue with plastics that we have no part of whatsoever. So yeah, you're not going to have that happen on this. No. Adding your own RAM and SSD void warranty? Absolutely not. You could buy these bare bones. Go for it. Absolutely go for it. If you have any questions on memory compatibility or storage compatibility, feel free to reach out to me or the service center. The amount of memory and storage that is becoming available grows weekly, so it's hard to stay on top of, but we have a great community out there, and people have let us know, hey, this works great, and hey, this doesn't. And I have created an Excel sheet that kind of, you know, gives people a glimpse as to what works and what doesn't. So feel free. Does not avoid the warranty, and you can definitely do that. So have at it. Fortnite laptop player, you're welcome. All right, folks, that's it. Otherwise, I'm going to be stuck here talking to you guys. I miss you. I love this. Thanks for watching, and yeah, hopefully we'll do this soon. Peace.